Welcome to the Bee's Business, or welcome back if you've been here before. I'm so glad you're joining us for today's adventure. If you're new around here, my name is Brittney, and one of my favorite ways to spend my time is exploring this amazing world we live in with my family. My husband's name is Brandon, and we have 3 children, Eli, Charlie, and Collin. In today's vlog, we're off on a family adventure exploring a portion of the coast of Maine. Maine has a lot of coastline, so even though you're about to see multiple amazing Maine gems in this vlog, you truly are just seeing a tiny bit of this amazing state. We've done a lot of adventuring, so if you're interested in visiting Maine, or if you live here and are looking for new areas to explore yourself, be sure to check out our other vlogs on our channel. While I'm biased, I truly believe Maine is one of the most beautiful states in the US, and there are no shortages of amazing bits of history and nature to explore throughout this state. In today's vlog, our first stop is Pemaquid Point Lighthouse, where we get to explore inside of our first lighthouse. We've visited many lighthouses in Maine, but this is the first one that we get to go all the way to the top of. Next, we're headed to Fort Henry Williams to explore what was the largest fort of its time in New England. There is so much history here. Lastly, we are visiting the Rachel Carson Salt Pond Preserve, where we get to both cool off and interact with some of Maine's adorable yet feisty sea creatures. Join us as we explore. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and become a member of our community here at the Bee's Business. Also, if you enjoy this vlog, be sure to give the video a like and share it with anyone who may also enjoy it. This helps our channel so much. Here we go. Stop 1. Pemaquid Point Lighthouse.
The kids are a little pent up because it took us about an hour and 40 minutes to get here. So they've got some energy that they are now releasing. But we have never been here before. It's July in Maine, for reference for you. And this is absolutely gorgeous. Bathrooms are right over there. They do have more than just porta potties, so that's really nice. The parking is pretty ample. And they have some picnic tables over here, so you could have a little picnic lunch. They've got some benches to just sit and enjoy. I see some people out on the rocks over there. Behind that house-like structure there is where the lighthouse is, and we actually can go up inside of this lighthouse. I'm not sure if you can see the person up in the top of it right now, but when you pay the entrance fee to come in, you are also paying to be able to go up into the lighthouse. Kids are naturally making their way out on to the rocks, and I can't blame them. I'm about to do the exact same thing. This is a really beautiful little spot. I love that you can visit the lighthouse and have so many other things to view and observe while you're in the area as well.
We were so fortunate to visit Pemaquid Point Lighthouse on such a gorgeous day, and we had no idea how much rocky shoreline we would be able to explore while we were here, so this was a really pleasant surprise. For all of us, the kids adore exploring this style rocky coastline, as do we. We were able to find some little crabs and just get up close with the ocean and feel the mist, and also be in the presence of those powerful waves. There's just nothing quite like the sound of those rolling, strong waves as they crash onto the rocks. As you can see, upon arrival, we decided that exploring on the rocks was the perfect way to get ourselves out of the car, stretch our legs, and let the kids get a little bit of pent-up energy out after traveling for quite some time, as I mentioned earlier. So we spent a good amount of time here before we ever even went up and visited the lighthouse or anything associated with the lighthouse. It is thanks to the American Lighthouse Foundation and its dedicated chapter, the Friends of Pemaquid Point Lighthouse, that we and others are able to go and climb inside of this lighthouse and go all the way to the beacon at the top and enjoy the magnificent views from that location. And as with most lighthouses, Pemaquid Point has quite the history. The first lighthouse at Pemaquid Point was constructed in 1827. But 8 years later, due to the poor construction of the original tower, it was necessary that a new tower be built at the station, which was completed in 1835. Pemaquid Point Light received its first Fresnel lens, a fourth order, in 1856. The U.S. Lighthouse Service constructed a fog bell house and tower in 1897, but by 1930 the bell was removed from the light station. The lighthouse has the distinction of being the first sentinel in Maine to be automated when its keeper was permanently removed in 1934. The height of Pemaquid Point Lighthouse is 38 feet. It is an active lighthouse that aids navigation, and it is owned by the U.S. Coast Guard and licensed to the American Lighthouse Foundation. The Friends of Pemaquid Point Lighthouse, which is a chapter of the American Lighthouse Foundation, is dedicated to restoring the historic lighthouse. I find this rather incredible, but the tower's original Fresnel lens is still in use. And you can visit the keeper's house, which now hosts a fisherman's museum. The exhibits include equipment, photos, and artifacts from the fishing and lobstering industries, as well as the lighthouse service. The tower and outbuildings are open daily, and in 2003, this light became the first lighthouse to appear on American currency, when its image was used for the official Maine quarter. A couple of the finer details related to visiting the lighthouse. The whole park area where the lighthouse is located is open to visitors from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day from the middle of May until mid to late October. The closing date varies each year. The lighthouse has limited hours for climbing, so you want to be aware of those before you go, and it is only open if the weather permits. It is suggested that if you would like to climb the tower that you call ahead just to be sure that climbing is an option for that day. It's also important to know that there is a 46-inch height requirement in order to climb the tower when it is open, so if you're bringing children with you, keep that in mind. The fees associated with the park are very reasonable. Adults and children 12 and older are $4. Children 5 to 11 are $1, and under 4 is free. Climbing the Lighthouse Tower is included in this fee, so that is not a separate charge. And additionally, there are a couple of other attractions located within the park, including a learning center, an art gallery, the Fisherman's Museum, and of course, the public restrooms and the Lighthouse Tower.
One of my favorite things to do as a kid was spend time observing and looking in tidal pools.
Dogs are allowed in the park on a leash. No drones are allowed. For the safety of visitors, it is recommended to stay off the rocks when there is a high surf. They warn that it is a very real danger of being washed off the rocks if you walk too close to the water. The lower rocks are slippery, and even though the sea may not appear rough, an occasional rogue wave unexpectedly reaches higher points on the rocks. People have lost their lives here from these waves. They also warn to beware of poison ivy near the rocks. These beautiful rocks are made of granite and pegmatite. More specifically, two different types: igneous, which is the light-colored, and metamorphic, which is the darker-colored areas. Minerals found among the layers, including quartz, feldspar, and black mica, cause the different colors.
did you find?
A crab.
Oh my gosh, he is the cutest little thing. Wow.
Look, where's him with your eyes?
I am.
No, like, where's
Oh.
the camera?
He's a cute little dude. How tiny. Oh my goodness.
What are you doing there?
A little baby crab.
No. I feel like he wants to go in the ocean.
He probably does. You should put him back in a little tidal pool though, because these big waves are pretty rough. We're setting the crab free. Collin wanted to make sure he found a tidal pool that was deep enough for the crab to stay alive. Now he's on some of the mussels. Great job giving him a nice place to live. Perfect. You did great, buddy.
Your bell was jingling in my pocket. Stand right here. Give me a hand.
Hold on, Charlie.
Now, if you're a little bit of a lighthouse nerd like I am, then maybe you have wondered where the whole term Fresnel lens came from. This is certainly something I was not aware of until visiting Pemaquid Point Lighthouse and learning about it. In 1822, a French physicist named Augustin Fresnel invented a lens that would make his name commonplace along the seacoasts of Europe and North America. It looked like a giant glass beehive with a light at the center. The lens could be as tall as 12 feet with concentric rings of glass prisms above and below to bend the light into a narrow beam.
Look at that, it's 1:13 right now, and the shadow is just after 1 o'clock.
At the center, the lens was shaped like a magnifying glass, so the concentrated beam was even more powerful. Tests showed that while an open flame lost nearly 97% of its light and a flame with reflectors behind it still lost 83% of its light, the Fresnel lens was able to capture all but 17% of its light. Because of its amazing efficiency, a Fresnel lens could easily throw its light 20 or more miles to the horizon. 7 types, called orders, of the lens were developed. The first 3 largest orders were for seacoast lights, while orders 4 through 6 were smaller for harbor or bay lights. There was also a 3.5 order lens that was used mostly in the Great Lakes. In Europe, the new lenses were quickly adopted, but the head of the U.S. Lighthouse Board, Stephen Pleasanton, strongly resisted, feeling that it was a fad. It was not until the 1850s that most U.S. lights were converted. Many lighthouses have their original Fresnel lenses in place, though many are now unused, having been replaced by aeromarine beacons. Many of these beautiful lenses have been removed from the lighthouses and placed in museums and other display areas where the public can view and appreciate the workmanship that went into them. Others, unfortunately, have been vandalized when the lighthouses were abandoned and left unguarded. Some lenses, when they were being replaced by the modern lights, were just tossed over the side of their tower. Here at Pemaquid, they have the original 4th order lens still active. When you climb the tower, please make sure to refrain from touching the lens. The oils from your fingers will overheat and cause the lens to crack further than it already has. There are some pieces currently missing out of the prism and the lens is irreplaceable, so please do not touch it. Along with the lens, Fresnel left behind his theories of light, which forms the basis of modern optics. Today, the principle behind the Fresnel lens is used in the headlights of cars and in the flashing lights on police and emergency vehicles, and is also the lens on overhead projectors and in darkroom equipment. And because the history of this whole experience amazes me, a few additional facts for you. This lighthouse was first commissioned in 1827 during John Quincy Adams' administration. Pemaquid was the first lighthouse to be automated in Maine in 1934. The fuel that was used at first was sperm whale oil, at least until 1863. The original Argand lens used 10 lamps. The 4th order Fresnel lens was installed in 1856. The original stairs were circular and made of hard pine. Only one baby was born at the lighthouse, Susie Lawler, born to Joseph and Sophiana Lawler in 1868. The land for the lighthouse was sold to the U.S. government for $90 in 1826 from Samuel and Sarah Martin. The 1,000-watt bulb in the lens is visible for 14 miles. The fixed white light flashes once every 6 seconds. A series of batteries at the foot of the tower are equipped with a trip mechanism for whenever there is a power failure. Otherwise, the light is connected to the regular electrical system of the area. This lighthouse was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1985. The oil house was first built in 1896, and at first it stored kerosene. A tender would steer as close to land as possible, then send a line ashore to transport the fuel to the land. The original fog signal bell tower was established in 1897. At first, it was a brick engine house with a hand-operated fog bell. The bell was replaced twice, in 1898 and again in 1899. The white wooden tower was built in 1899 to house the counterweights that function like a grandfather clock mechanism. This beautiful light was originally lit by oil, then kerosene, and then electrified, becoming automatic in 1934. It can be seen for 14 miles in clear weather. The light is a familiar navigational aid to fishermen and all coastal traffic. It warns of the dangers of rugged, treacherous rocks upon which it stands.
We are headed into the museum now. We just traveled up into the lighthouse.
The Fishermen's Museum was opened in 1972 with the goal of collecting and preserving historical data and artifacts related to the fishing industry in the Bristol area. It is organized, directed, and staffed by Bristol residents. The museum is housed in the Lighthouse Keeper's House on the ground floor and has focused on preserving the fishing and marine heritage of the Bristol area with displays, models, dioramas, and photographs. Included in the collection are captain's logs and historical articles about the many ships wrecked on or near the lighthouse rocks, along with an extensive number of photos and other historical artifacts and information about the Pemaquid Point Lighthouse. No admission is charged for the museum, so it is entirely dependent on donations. Have you ever wanted to spend a night in a lighthouse? You can pretty much do that here at Pemaquid Point. There is a location called the Keeper's House Rental Apartment, and this apartment in the Keeper's House is available to rent year-round for $1,600 a week or $250 per night. The Lighthouse Park is considered a magical place for a wedding. You can check for rates and available dates by visiting their website. Also available within the park is the Pemaquid Art Gallery. We did not visit the art gallery on this day, but I'll still share a little bit of information about it. The art gallery was founded by local artists from New Harbor in July of 1929. The present gallery building was opened in 1960, continuing the gallery's distinction as the oldest existing art society in the state of Maine. The exhibitions reflect both traditional and contemporary approaches to the art of today. During a visit to the gallery, you will see watercolor, oil, pastel, wood turning, drawings, and ceramics. All artists are local, full or part-time residents and have been juried into the group. The art gallery is open daily from 10 to 5 p.m. from June to October. And the Learning Center houses artifacts from the Fishermen's Museum, shows a video loop of lighthouses in Maine, provides a display of the dangers of walking on the rocks, and serves as a venue for other events. This space is available for rent as well. Our next stop on today's adventures is at the Colonial Pemaquid State Historic Site where Fort William Henry is located. This site offers a glimpse of what life was like at an English frontier settlement during the 17th and 18th centuries. The site gained recognition as a National Historic Landmark in 1993. It features a museum/visitor center, the partially reconstructed Fort William Henry, Fort House, Village, boat ramp, and pier. The museum/visitor center offers exhibits on the history of Pemaquid from early Native American life through the colonial period. It includes and displays selected artifacts from the over 100,000 artifacts uncovered on this site and a large diorama of the Pemaquid village. To enhance their enjoyment of the museum, there is a scavenger hunt style activity that is offered for children, and there are restrooms located at the museum as well. Now for a little history about Fort William Henry. It was the second of 3 forts built on this site. The partial reconstruction that now stands here was completed in 1908. The bastion of the fort contains interpretive panels and artifact exhibits as well as a commanding view of Johns Bay from the roof. The fort house dates back to the last quarter of the 18th century. Its earliest known owner was Alexander Nichols Jr., son of one of the last commanders of Fort Frederick. Today, it includes a parlor room, furnished in the style of the early 19th century, a research library, archaeology lab, interpretive information, gift shop, and artifact storage from the many archaeological digs that have been conducted here at colonial Pemaquid and the surrounding areas. The village is a collection of 14 stone cellar holes that reveal the location and use of several buildings from the various periods of the village's history. Most of these have an interpretive panel describing the likely use of the structure and some of the artifacts found during archaeological excavations. On our trip today, we visited Fort William Henry, the cemetery, and the pier/boat ramp area. So while we did not visit the museum or visitor center, the fort house, or the village, I wanted to include all the facts I could in this vlog anyway. The Colonial Pemaquid State Historic Site is open daily from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. from Memorial Day through Labor Day. I was pleasantly surprised to see just how much of the fort we could climb throughout, and I was very excited that we could climb to the very top and see these views because, man, they did not disappoint. Fort William Henry, built in 1692, was extraordinary for its time. Massachusetts Governor Sir William Phips spent 2/3 of the colony's budget to construct it. Workers used 2,000 cartloads of stone to build the walls 10 to 22 feet high, and a stone bastion 29 feet in height. The fort housed nearly 20 cannons and 60 soldiers. For all its apparent strength, this fort did not last. Native people, upset at their treatment by the English, united with the French to attack the fort in 1696. This fort, which had seemed so strong, proved weak. Mortar used to build the stone walls was of poor quality and could not withstand the attack. Fort William Henry fell. The English abandoned Pemaquid. And prior to the construction of Fort William Henry, there was Fort Charles. Fort Charles was built in 1677 with the goal of protecting an English settlement that had already been destroyed once during the first of the French and Indian Wars. With its 7 cannons and walls made of wooden pickets, Fort Charles appeared to be a strong defensive work in this rough and tumble frontier, claimed by both England and France. Despite its appearance of strength, Fort Charles fell in 1689 when Native Americans, encouraged by their French allies, attacked the settlement. The fort's garrison, plagued by desertions and numbering as few as 16 men, was too small. Further enemy fire from behind a rock outcrop nearby proved especially deadly and difficult to counter. The destruction and abandonment of Fort Charles and the Pemaquid settlement was a major victory for the Native Americans and their French allies. As a result, England abandoned mid-coast Maine for the next 3 years. And after Fort William Henry was built, there was Fort Frederick. Fort Frederick was built in 1729, 33 years after the fall of Fort William Henry. Colonial David Dunbar, surveyor of His Majesty's Woods in America, re-established a settlement here. Dunbar imported recent Scots-Irish immigrants from Boston, rebuilt the fort, and established a settlement here without the support of the Massachusetts government, which challenged Dunbar's authority to grant titles to the new settlers. After losing a court battle with Massachusetts, Dunbar and the settlers abandoned Pemaquid. Massachusetts sent a garrison to Fort Frederick and maintained the fort until 1759, when it was decommissioned. Fort Frederick then fell into ruin. Local residents voted to destroy it in 1775 to avoid its occupation by British troops during the American Revolution. The pier and boat ramp are available for use by visitors, so you can launch your own boat there, and there are various picnic areas throughout the park. I've had a fascination with cemeteries since I was a young child, and anytime that I have the opportunity to check one out, I always do. This cemetery contains gravestones that date as far back as the early 1700s. It is a privately owned area, although the Maine Bureau of Parks and Lands assists with its stewardship. But due to the fragile nature of many of the stones, it is asked that you refrain from making rubbings of the stones. If you would like more information on one or more of the gravestones, cemetery inventory sheets can be acquired at the Fort House.
The ocean smells here are fantastic. Wow.
Our final stop on this beautiful day of adventuring in Maine is the Rachel Carson Salt Pond Preserve. Here at the Salt Pond Preserve, a little bit of the sea is left behind in the salt pond every time the tide recedes. People have been coming to this 1/4 acre tidal pool for many years to delight at the tidal remnants within, to explore or picnic on the rocky shore, or, as Rachel Carson did many years ago, to conduct scientific studies. It was from this tidal pool that she gathered some of the material for her book, The Edge of the Sea. A foresighted conservationist, Carson was instrumental in starting the Maine chapter of the Nature Conservancy in 1956. Across the road from this area, you can go for a 1.2-mile walk. It's the 78-acre Salt Pond Preserve. The trail starts off on a hill but flattens out in about 1/4 mile for a quiet walk in the forest. The Rachel Carson Salt Pond Preserve was brought under the protection of the Nature Conservancy in 1966 and dedicated to her legacy in 1970. In 1962, Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring. It was a very important book in the world's understanding of pesticide misuse, and at that time, Carson was already a renowned marine biologist who had published respected works on marine ecology, including The Edge of the Sea. Most of her research for this book was done at a tidal pool near the southern end of Route 32 in New Harbor. The preserve now encompasses 78 acres, including forested upland trails, but the main attraction is the 1/4 acre tidal salt pond itself. One of my favorite things that I got to do while we were here at the Salt Pond Preserve was use my drone to capture incredible images and footage of this location. I especially love this tool that I have added to my collection of videography equipment because there's just not any other way to get these kind of views. And so, if you're at all like me and find yourself daydreaming about what birds get to see and this bird's eye view that they enjoy, then here you go. Here's a little shot at what their world looks like.
see my little fella?
Yeah, we found way like that.
Another tool that I particularly enjoy using when we are exploring on our family adventures is my GoPro. It is a tool that just offers me something that none of my others can, and that is beautiful underwater footage. Here you are, lying on the bottom of the Salt Pond Preserve. I decided that it would be fun to throw the GoPro and then watch the footage afterwards to see what it looked like to be thrown into the water and to sink and then be retrieved. We also found the GoPro to be very helpful on this day because we found this scene. Before your eyes, you are watching quite a few crabs and some little shrimp-like creatures. They may be shrimp indeed, but I don't want to say they're shrimp without being positive, so we're going to call them shrimp-like creatures, and they are feasting. I am not entirely sure what this deceased animal is that they are making a meal of, but the science behind this moment, or these moments, was just amazing, and I am so thankful that we were able to capture this and see nature taking its course. And out of curiosity, Brandon did pick up the deceased creature. It seemed as though it was something long, perhaps a fish, maybe an eel. We're not entirely sure, but what I do know is that we were entirely fascinated. Spending some time exploring at the Salt Pond Preserve was the perfect way to end this day. We didn't bring bathing suits or anything with the intent of getting wet, though most of the family members did anyway. And you know what? That's just okay, because that's part of what comes along with our family adventures. Sometimes we end up doing things that we hadn't initially intended to do, and occasionally that means getting wet when we hadn't planned to get wet. Everyone had fun and everyone made memories, and that is what is most important to us. Thank you so much for joining us on today's adventures. I hope that you feel inspired to do some exploring in your own state, or if you're lucky enough to explore in Maine, to visit some of these locations. There are so many more adventures for our family to pursue. So please subscribe to our channel, join our community, hang out with us, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye!